Hello, everyone. We are the Bias Bros, and this is our final photography presentation for our 30-day project. So our thesis is that my-side bias can be reduced by understanding issues on the basis of values and approaching such issues with my-side bias in mind.
Background: what is my-side bias and how can we reduce it?
The first image is going to be a bunch of tweets that we found popping up along with audio recordings of us reading them. The purpose of this slide is to grab the viewer's attention with some of the examples of tweets we found interesting. Next, we will use the following images and potentially some additional ones as they fit to act as visual representations of my-side bias and the types of sources we used. These will be shown when my-side bias is being defined.
We will then begin familiarizing our audience with the first point of our thesis. My-side bias can be reduced by understanding issues on the basis of values. We will provide the example of income inequality and the value judgment of assessing the middle poor or middle upper gap, showing a graph of wealth distribution to drive the point. We will then introduce the second example of climate change to help our audience further understand the idea of big ticket issues being a matter of values, not necessarily one side lacking knowledge or facts. We will have a quote from Keith Stanovich and a picture of him. We will read the quote, which will act as a further explanation of the value judgments of environmental protection versus economic growth. Finally, we will bring things into focus and explore the debate of the COVID-19 vaccine in terms of values. This will bring things together to what our video will focus on specifically. We'll show a list of possible value differences as they relate to the vaccine. This is something we're still actively exploring.
Building understanding, learning to be critical even towards the things we like to hear. We interviewed Dr. Kathy Hogue, Professor of Biomedical Laboratory Diagnostics at Michigan State University, for some input on the pro-vax perspective. The purpose of this image and interview is to show the connection to values the vaccine represents, such as herd immunity and community-oriented mindset, as opposed to personal freedoms. This also shows some insight to part of the issue of perpetuating my-side bias. This slide is a work in progress, but we will interview a doctor who is anti-vax and get their perspective on the vaccine, as well as the moral implications of the vaccine. This will also tie into my-side bias.
Opposition to our thesis. Is it really all about values? Is there more to it? We will bring up the point of people theorizing and suspecting, showing tweets that relate such as the one above. This is the first opposing point to our thesis. Hashtag scamdemic, hashtag plandemic tweets and relevant images relating to evidence will be shown while information is given about things like Event 201 and Operation Lockstep, aka evidence used by hashtag scamdemic, hashtag plandemic believers to support the claim. We will critically break down this evidence to determine if it's bunk, then relate the finding to what our thesis proposes.
It's alarming to see how far the misinformation can carry, whether it's comparing CDC clinical trials to random case reports. For the average American, you believe what looks real. With Twitter especially, you see how unlikely people are to cite their sources. Rather, they play on the fear of the unknown than the actual science. Piggybacking off the previous slide, I wanted to focus on a group I came across while scrolling on Twitter called the AAPS, the Associations of American Physicians and Surgeons. While looking at their logo, you would think that they're a group of credited physicians and surgeons, but digging deeper would prove anything otherwise. These physicians were given a platform in an anti-vax convention, speaking of how home remedies are much more effective than any type of vaccine. Just think, for an already vaccine hesitant patient, how would these doctors impact them and play into their confirmation bias / my-side bias? Another topic we wish to dive deeper into is the role of politics. Hopefully we wish to interview with a politician. which could bring to light some of the reasons as to why vaccines and COVID have become a political topic. Just watching Twitter's responses to the pandemic and the election really alarmed me personally as to the effect. From the government trying to control us through magnetic tracking in the vaccine to the separation between political parties, it makes sense as to why people fall into their my side bias. The fear of the unknown can cause them to fall into what brings them comfort, even though it's not true. Finally, we're going to look into the work field response that resulted in the nurse shortage, labor shortage, among other impacts, and how these responses could also be because of people falling into the my side bias through hashtags like #coercion and #NoVaccineMandate.
Our experience. This was a lot. How did it affect us? What did we learn?
Here's a tweet that represents what was most impactful to me. I will use this to explain the effect of browsing through content that is all very different from my own beliefs, namely content surrounding COVID being planned. I will tie this into our thesis by commenting on my side bias reduction.
This was my most impactful tweet, as it directly shows the two sides of my body, my choice movement. It helped me understand the other side's view by comparing it to something I already believed and agreed with. I will use this photo along with others to explain how this project has helped me open my mind to others' ideas without necessarily having to agree with them.
The purpose of my most impactful tweet was to understand how fearful anti-vax people are, where they feel the need to twist the narrative of being unvaccinated into a victim role. Tweets like these are similar to a lot of anti-vax tweets that are baseless and serve to spread fear, hate, and distrust rather than factual evidence.
For me, my most alarming tweet was one that elicited an emotional response. The blatant response from a popular influencer on how COVID affects the children failed to recognize that even a single child's death is too much. While children do have a much lower mortality rate, all I could imagine was a mom who recently lost their child coming across this tweet and how she would feel after being personally affected. It reaffirms the idea that if it doesn't affect me, it doesn't exist, a mindset I recognized throughout this project.
Using our understanding for the better. Why aren't people getting vaccinated and what can we do about it? According to this 2016 paper, a multi-state survey of school-age parents from 2002 to 2003 showed that distrust in the government is one of the main factors. Listed are two quotes I found most interesting. This article is from a student newspaper of the University of Warwick, and it touches on the reasons for the anti-vax movement along with how we can best combat it. Rather than condemning these people, it is more productive to examine the real issue at the root of vaccine hesitancy, fear, stemming from a distrust in the authority promoting the vaccine. These final thoughts will be used to wrap up our video.